Give me a minute, and we'll talk about Harley Puppy's question here. It's a great question. I'm curious as to how they calculate the number of losses. That's a great question. How do they know that they took out half a dozen Russian tanks today? How do they know, or how do they make the claim that they took out 31 artillery pieces? Now, the first thing, Harley, is it's a claim. It should not be taken as gospel truth. But one thing that I have found, and I'll tell you, the Russian MOD makes lots of claims too, and I ignore them. Why? Because they don't reflect reality. That's why. According to the Russians, they've taken out 428, I think, aircrafts of the Ukrainian Air Force. The Ukrainian Air Force never had that many planes. I mean, it's ridiculous. According to them, they've taken out, I think, 18 HIMARS systems. The Ukrainians only got 12. And they seem to still all be working. So claims, right? Whose claims can you trust is the first thing. And when you see the ridiculous claims of the Russian MOD, you just have to discount them, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to the Ukrainian claims, the big difference is evidence. The Ukrainians have evidence, and that's why I want to point you to this screenshot here. This is a screenshot from Reporting from Ukraine. So that's the handle on YouTube, Reporting from Ukraine. And the guy does a great job. And you can see from this screenshot, he identifies 21 specific vehicles and tanks that were taken out by, I think he cites 3 different artillery brigades over the course of the last 10 days, as well as a command and control center. Now, what evidence is there to support these claims? He's got video of every single one. Remember, these losses are vastly being incurred by drones, and the drones have video footage attached to them. And so the Ukrainian army gets the video footage back, and they have confirmed evidence of each one of the Russian losses. And you can stack those up and look at that evidence, which we'll talk about in just a second. For things like the HIMARS strikes on the command and control center, obviously there's no video there, but what you do is you send a reconnaissance drone in to videotape the hit, and that's exactly what they did. I encourage you to go over to the Tube of Views, do a search for Reporting from Ukraine's channel, and look at this video from today. Today is the 1st of October, 2023, day 585 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Take a look at it, because here's what you'll see. For every single claim the guy makes, he's got photographic evidence, video evidence, and he runs the videos. Now, I don't run those kinds of videos on my channel. I just don't. It's not my thing. I'm not a military person, and I don't think those images are the things we all need to be part of our regular diet. I'm concerned about how looking at that stuff too much affects people. So anyway, now look, the Ukrainians are only one group doing this, and it's fair to not trust their numbers because they have good reason to, fudge the numbers up a little bit. Dominic Nichols over at the Telegraph seems to think you should take about 20% off their numbers. Now, I think he's just making that number up. Okay, fine, whatever. But generally speaking, I find the Ukrainian MOD does a good job of documenting losses and providing evidence to that effect. It is worth mentioning, this is a hard thing to do. And nobody's numbers should be taken as gospel truth. It's a complicated business. I just saw a video of, it was something like maybe 50 tanks. And they were all out of commission, all damaged in strikes. And then the next day, there's a satellite surveillance of the same field, and there's only 23 tanks left, and they don't have any barrels on them. It looks like what happened was 50 tanks got hit, 27 of them could be repaired, but they needed new rifle barrels or firing, barrels. And so they took the barrels off the ones that were too damaged to repair and just replaced the barrels. So were they destroyed? Were they damaged? How were they counted? It's very hard to tell. One of the ways that we do that is with independent open source intelligence. And there's a couple of good ones out there. Now, this is the big one, Oryx. Oryx is independent open source intelligence. They comb through the video footage and the reporting that comes out from both sides, and they validate the losses. And so if we take a look, their losses for Russian tanks are less than what the Ukrainians claim. But one thing we can be sure of is that this is the floor. This is the bare minimum of tanks that the Russians have lost, because Oryx is meticulous in the evidence and eliminating duplicates through geolocated evidence for their claims. I hate to lose these guys because they've been doing this all volunteer, and they're going to be closing up shop this month. So up until now, we've had great data from them, but it looks like they're not going to be a source in the near future. And so one of the guys picking up the slack is a guy over on Twitter whose name is Andrew Perpetua. And Andrew is certainly pro-Ukrainian, pro-democracy kind of fella, but he's also meticulous in his objectivity. He doesn't accept claims from either side. He needs evidence. And so his numbers even trend a little lower for losses on both sides because he's got a high standard of evidence, which we should all have. So if we look at the open source and we look at the Ukrainian claims, somewhere between them is likely the truth. And no matter how you cut it, these losses are devastating for the Russian side. The Ukrainian losses should not be underestimated either. Now, for my part, I couldn't give a fuck if every Abrams tank we send gets lost in battle as long as the crews survive. Because the equipment can all be replaced. But Ukraine has a finite supply of Ukrainians. The Russians might be able to feed their people into the meat grinder, but the Ukrainians can't. And so they don't. And that's another reason why we see such a vast difference in hardware losses between the two sides, a ratio generally of about 3-to-1 Russian to Ukrainian losses, because the Ukrainians don't take the kind of suicide risks that the Russians are being forced at gunpoint to take every day. All right, Haley Puppy, I hope that helps. If you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to hit me up. Thanks.